Hello and welcome to episode 123 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And I have been playing a lot of the show lately. I spent a long time grinding to get this cool 97 Adam Dunn card. He hit for a lot of power. Great card. But once I finally got him, I realized I cannot hit with him for shit. I just keep hitting everything into the ground. Nothing's working. I put a lot of effort into getting him, and he busted immediately. And that's kind of how I've felt about my fantasy team the last 3 or so weeks as well.
That's great. It's a great intro. Kind of a bust week for both of us. You and I both lost. Last week I was here gloating because I won and you lost, and this week we'll get into that a little bit later. We do have a very special segment for you all as well, which we'll get into before we talk about the matchups. But before we do all of that, Cam, you made a trade last night.
I did. I made a trade late last night. It might have even been after midnight. Zane put a call out for some players he wanted to trade away. Paul Sewald caught my eye, and I made a move for him. What are the full details? I traded away Luis Matos and 2 second-rounders for Sewald and a very, very complicated conditional third-round pick. And I'm happy about this deal. I guess we'll start out. Sewald, this very much feels like, the type of deal I always make. And it always works out for me. It's kind of like a low risk, high reward. I always seem to do well with these. I filled the need here. I didn't give up anything I wasn't comfortable parting with. And I, especially with Hendricks going back down, really needed another closer. And Scott McGough has been getting some save opportunities. McGough, it's a weekly thing. This is the third week in a row I've mentioned him and kind of struggled with his name. I still don't know. I think it's McGough.
It's McGough.
It's McGough. I'm not going to remember that next week when I inevitably bring him up again. But he's getting some save opportunities, and I'm hoping Bruce Dark Gratterall will, but that's looking less and less likely. But I need Sewald pretty badly, and I got him. As for EBO, Matos is a young guy. He just debuted last week in the majors, and he's hit well to start. He's an outfielder. I've had him for a while now, and it kind of reached the point, he's coming up. I'm not convinced he's a long-term piece on my team, so I got to get rid of him. The clock is ticking. I think he could be a good get for EBO if he keeps hitting decently. He's had a good season in the minors so far, but I'm not sure what I would do with him. So good guy to get for them. As for what we've all been waiting for, that conditional pick, to kind of explain that all, we were kind of going back and forth on what I would receive in return, or there was I was really trying to get Judd Fabian back from them in this deal, and we were talking maybe I would add a slightly better prospect to get Fabian. You just you just sent a trade to the wrong person.
Yeah, wrong person.
You're sending Connor's 2024 second somewhere.
I am.
Interesting. I'll keep tabs on that. But yeah, I really wanted to get Judd Fabian. That didn't quite end up happening. But I suggested maybe I'll just take a third back from you. They were like, Zane said, please take one of my thirds. Take one of my 2026 thirds. If I have any more of them, I will die. He had 4 of them. So I was like, yeah, I could take, how about Andrews, or how about Ruthvik, or one of those. And Zane, on a whim, what did he say? He said we can have a sliding scale. And that kind of stopped everything in his tracks. And I was like, yes, sliding scale. This was 11:58 last night. We were just kind of excited by it, trying to find out what brackets for saves we wanted. Yeah, based on the number of saves Sewald gets, which kind of had us forced us to rank the 4 teams in order of how good we think they're going to be in 2026 to assign a value to each of these 4 2026 third round picks. So we kind of determined I'm the best, Andrew second, Ruthvik's third, and Daniel and Matt are the fourth worst or fourth best team, so therefore the best of the 4 picks. And then we kind of set some brackets. If he kind of busts, then I get the worst pick or the better pick. If he goes great the rest of the year, finishes with 34 or more saves, then I get the worst of the 4 picks. And we haven't done anything like this before. It's just another new type of condition that we're always pushing the boundaries for. I love every second of it.
Yeah. I think this was a good trade for both sides. I mean, I think Sewald's actually pitching better than last season. His WAR, according to Fangraphs, is already double than what it was last season in half as many games.
His peripherals look a lot better.
Yeah, his peripherals look a lot better. I think he's a nice add for you. I think, like you said, you needed a closer. I don't think you paid a terribly big price to give one up. At the same time, I thought EVO did a good job of cashing out on a 33-year-old reliever whose replacement as a closer is kind of sitting there in the wings with
Munoz.
Yeah, Andres Munoz. Thank you. And I think I'm not that big on Luis Matos, but I think he's an interesting enough prospect for them. Interestingly, I was the one who traded you Luis Matos way back when in 2020. So you had him for a while.
Was this in a Tyone deal by any chance?
Yes, that's a good memory. And then 2 days later, I flipped Tyone as part of a deal to get Brandon Woodruff. So I like to think that worked out for the both of us. Yours took a little while longer to pay out, but yeah, I think this is a decent return for EVO for Sewald.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the conditions?
Yes, I do love the conditions. I always love new innovations. I feel like the more creative trades that we make in this league, the better. I am disappointed about one thing though, and what I was disappointed about was that Anthony did not react as he usually does with these lengthy trade announcements. It took you 8 minutes to get it sent out, so it lived up to the hype.
So that's not quite true, because what happened, we were kind of finalizing the terms. I asked Zane, I said, mind if I quote trade to announce to stir up interest while we work out this last detail? So we hadn't fully we knew we were going to make a trade. We were just finalizing the brackets. We wanted to get eyes on it before we announced the trade, get some anticipation there.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I told you I knew what it was. I predicted it correctly. I'm glad it did. Anything else you'd like to say about this trade, or are we ready to move on to our next segment?
Let's do it. We're doing power rankings midseason 2023.
Yeah, hard to believe we're already midway through. Unlike our off-season power rankings, I don't think we're going to go as in depth here. We do also have a ton of matchups to talk about, but we're going to give you guys an idea of where we stand right now. We broke this up kind of into 3 clumps, just like last week. Lots of clump talk. One of the as an aside, one of the 3 clumps from last week actually stayed together, but the other 2 clumps broke up. So a little disappointed about that. But let's talk about this first clump here, shall we? You and I both had it the same for 12 through 9, correct?
That is correct. We both,
okay.
I guess starting with 12, we both put Daniel and Matt. Not really much to say there or talk about. They're 1 and 10 after going 2 and 19, 2 and 18 last year. We thought they'd be a little bit better this year, and that did not happen.
Yeah, they started to trade away some of the quote unquote win now pieces that they had acquired, thinking like the George Springer, Hunter Renfroe deal, and taking in some younger guys. James Outman comes to mind. Luis Garcia is an IL stash. So yeah, it's another one of those seasons for them. Not much else to say.
No, not really. Moving up to number 11, we have EBO. They're trading some guys away also, such as Paul Sewald. Um, there's definitely a lot to be excited about with them. With Riley Green doing well, but he's hurt. Torque is having a bit of a hot stretch right now. But overall, the pitching's just not where it should be. A lot of their guys are hurt, and they're 3-8 right now.
Yeah, all these Tigers pitchers not really panning out is really kind of putting a damper on the rotation. Although having Strider and Yuri Perez as a 1-2 punch atop the rotation is really fun. On the hitting side, there are some individual hitters who are, doing pretty well. But as a whole, I think the offense is lacking in depth, like good solid depth across the board, and I think that's really hurting them. That's not to say that there are pieces in the minor leagues who I think who can come up and maybe help. Although honestly, their farm system's starting to thin out a bit as some of these players get promoted. But I think this is still a team on the up and up. I think it's going to take some time.
I agree.
Yeah.
Moving along, number 10, we have Anthony. We put him at 6 in the preseason. We both dropped him down to 10, the biggest drop for any. No, that's not. The biggest drop for any team for me, tied for the biggest drop for any team for you. The pitching just was not what we hoped it would be, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this level. I mean, it's a nightmare. Sandy Alcantara has a 4.97 ERA. Alek Manoah's in the minors. I mean, that was a Cy Young Award winner and someone who was in the top 3 of the Cy Young last year. Christian Javier has been fantastic, but like Freddie Peralta is disappointed a bit. He has a 4.60 ERA. Andrew Heaney, after a hot start, has really struggled. Bailey Ober and Braxton Garrett are probably 2 of his better starters. Who would have seen that coming? It's just
I've always liked Bailey Ober, but
I have too. He had a home run problem, but it looks like he's tampered that down so far this year. And then on the hitting side, like again, some individual players I like. Spencer Steer's having a really nice year. That was a good trade for him. Xander Bogaerts, that Gleyber Torres deal I still really like from him from earlier in the year. Well, like Jazz Chisholm landing on the IL hasn't helped. O'Neill Cruz landing on the IL hasn't helped. Sean Murphy's been really good, but he's hurt again. So it's just not enough here. And it's a shame because I think there's talent here. It's just nothing's coming together for Anthony this year.
I agree. I could definitely see it coming together next year. It's just not this year.
Yeah, it's not in the cards.
But yeah, moving up to number 9. This is the last one we both have the same. We have Alex and Zach up from us both having them at 11 in the preseason. They got off to a slow start this year, but especially recently, they've been hitting the ball really well.
Yeah, I think they've been playing a lot better. The pitching staff looks really strong. Their ERA and WHIP are among some of the best in the league. Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, has made for a really good combination along with Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan's been their ace. Bobby Miller's looked solid so far. AJ Smith-Shawver has developed really nicely. So this is a team that's got quite a few solid young pitchers, and I get that they're probably going to take some lumps. But it looks like there's a nucleus here for a rotation that's potentially really dominant in a couple of years. This is not to even mention, too, like Gavin Williams is still sitting in AAA for them. Brian Wu's debuted, but is sitting on their minor league team right now. He's got 12 1/3 innings pitched in the majors. Cooper Jerpyson in the minors. So there's some other guys there. And then offensively, Tyro Estrada's having a really nice year. Brett Beatty's finally up. Julio Rodriguez has had a slow start to the year. Did you know he still has a 303 OBP?
Really?
Yeah, 12 homers, 15 steals, but a 303 OBP. That's insane. But Josh Lowe's broken out. He's got Christian Encarnacion Strand, who should be up any day now. Did you know he has a 600 OBP in June? Why haven't the Reds called him up?
They don't have anywhere to put him.
I saw he was playing in right field, and I wonder if maybe that's a route to get him out. But I don't
They
know.
could, but Will Benson's been on fire lately.
That is true. I mean, they could stop playing Kevin Newman.
They've mostly stopped playing Kevin Newman.
That's fair. I haven't even mentioned Jordan Walker, like Michael Bush, like CJ Abrams, Ryan McMahon, who had a 2 home run day yesterday, Josh Naylor, Francisco Alvarez. So like there's a lot of young, talented players on this team. And if they start putting it together, I think this team could be really dangerous. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really like this team. I'm really high in their future, and I think I've always been higher on this team than you. But I think we're kind of at a consensus here.
You have, and as evidenced by the fact that you talked way longer about them than any other team so far. That's okay, though. Moving on to number 8, we have our first break in where we rank the teams. Who do you have at 8?
I have Yuki at. Let me think this through for a second. I don't think the split's there anymore. I think I'm gonna. No, I can't. I can't ignore the roto. I have Yuki at 8. And you have Ruthvik at 8.
We do.
Yeah. So I'll go first. I put Yuki at 8. He is 13 points below Ruthvik in the latest roto, which I will put out after we record. And I did really like the Alex Bregman deal for him, right? There's a really interesting young core of hitters here with like Corbin Carroll, Randy Arozarena, Austin Riley, Alex Bregman, Dansby Swanson, Dalton Varsho, Brandon Lau, right? But his pitching staff just sucks. I mean, Tyler Wells is the SP1, Zach Eflin SP2, like great. Hunter Brown, like I like that little nucleus there, but I don't love the rest of this. Like Camilo Duvall's solid. Henley's been okay this year, but not as good as previous years. And other than that, there's not really a reliever I look at who I'm really like, oh my God, this guy's an asset. Like maybe Colin Poche. Like he's been good, but I don't know. It's just I have a hard time viewing a team with this little pitching as like a legitimate contender.
Mm-hmm. And I had Ruthvik at this 8th spot. This is where I had him to start the year. I think it's tough. They are coming off a big win over you. They have looked good in some matchups, but overall, I'm just not sure what the direction of this team is. They're kind of hanging around in no man's land. They're 4-6-1. I'm not sure I trust the hitting still. And I think Ruthvik has made some good pickups. I think Ryan Noda is a good pickup for this team. I think Mike Tauchman perhaps could be a good streaming guy. He is rostering 1 bench bat now after having 0 previously. Although, having a second bench bat would be nice on a day like today when you're playing a team that's right next to you in the standings and you have 4 lineup spots missing. I think that's what the benefits of restructuring your team would do to try and get another run or a couple RBI or something. But I still think the pitching has a solid core, even if it's looking worse. But Mitch Keller is good, and I still like Musgrove. And yeah, there's something here. But I think I'm more scared to face Yuki is what it comes down to.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, let's then flip it over to our number seven. I have Ruthvik, you have Yuki. For me, I think Ruthvik is a much better pitching staff. Musgrove, Webb, Keller, Senga, as much as I shit on him, Shane Bieber, right? Jose Barrios has looked a lot better this year. And then, you know, Joan Duran and Andres Munoz have been really good this year. Craig Kimbrell's racking up some saves, right? And then I think the hitting is not as good. Like, I think Yuki has a more impressive nucleus of young hitters, but I think that Ruthvik's pitching staff is more. Ruthvik's pitching staff is the level to which it is better than Yuki's pitching staff is higher than the level to which Yuki's hitting is better than Ruthvik's hitting, and I think that's ultimately what does it for me, and has me rank Ruthvik ahead of Yuki.
Yeah, as for Yuki, I think he's 2 games ahead of Ruthvik in the standings. That's a big part of it. I think Yuki's more likely to make the playoffs than Ruthvik is this year. So that's not something to be ignored. He's won 3 out of 4. I think he is about to enter a difficult stretch of his schedule, so there could be some regression coming, but I still like a lot of these bats. And even though the pitching, I agree, is iffy, Ben Lively's been surprisingly good. And I like a couple of his closers. I think, he's got so many Rays, he's going to go as far as the Rays go.
That's fair. I will add although Yuki has the better record, like Ruthvik has played some really good games, like really close games against like a lot of the better teams in this league, and they haven't had that easy of a schedule. So, that's definitely one thing. I think that's kind of kept me in on this team. But anything else we'd like to say there, or do we want to move on to our next team?
No, moving on. We both had Conor at number 6. It kind of feels like this is the right spot for him. He's 6-4-1. I don't really know what to think of this team. I just think it's kind of in a tier of its own as of now.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Conor has less problems than Ruthvik and Yuki, and honestly, I think some of the numbers look a little better when you put it in context and realize that Conor, had a really busy baseball season and might be a little better in Naruto if he wasn't. I think, and I think I said this last week, Conor really needs some pitching to compete. It's not going to work with an injured Robbie Ray and Verlander struggling, and McKenzie just landed back on the IL. I don't know if you saw that. But he needs a starting pitcher or two, I think, to really compete. But this feels like the baseline, like average team. Like, I think this is a team that is good enough to make the playoffs, but I also would not be surprised if like one of Ruthvik or Yuki or somebody else like makes a push and knocks Conor out of the playoffs.
I agree. For the record, Yuki is tied with Conor, right? Yeah, tied with Conor.
Yeah,
so it wouldn't be knocking Conor out, but yeah, still, I agree. I think he's more likely than not to make the playoffs still, but it could go either way.
I would say so too. Interestingly, Ruthvik is ahead of both of these teams in a row, as you all will see when it is published. But want to move to our top 5?
Yeah, breaking into the top 5, I put Andrew at 5th. He's playing really well. He looked really good in his win against me a couple weeks ago. I think he's kind of, and I said Conor's in a tier by himself. I think Andrew and Conor are in the same tier, and it's just the two of them, and they've kind of separated from the Yuki Ruthvik tier in my mind. I've got just a lot of, I'm feeling good about this team. There's some good pitchers. Anthony DeSclafani is back. Was he hurt? No, I guess not. But um,
He was
I like
back last year,
DeSclafani.
so he's like back relative to last year. I think he was hurt most of last year.
Gotcha. But yeah, Pablo Lopez is bouncing back from a rougher start or a rough late May. Chris Bassett's doing the same. Um, yeah, John Gray has been good, and he doesn't. There's not a lot of young guys necessarily, but I guess all of his young starting pitchers are currently hurt, and when they come back, uh, this team will look even better for the future.
Yeah, I wrestled with this a little bit, but I put Andrew at 5, and I disagree with you putting him in a tier with Conor. I think Andrew's in a tier with Erik. And as a matter of fact, Andrew is ahead of Erik and Naruto by 0.5. I think Andrew's been playing very well recently. He is second in the hitting roto. The pitching is where I think he still needs a little bit of help. I think it has been a little better as of lately. He is kind of in the middle of the pack there. I do think, he can be aggressive at the deadline and really target some more starting pitching. And I know he'll get some guys like Kyle Wright, Nick Lodolo back, but I feel very good about this team, and I think they're ready to play with the big boys. And I think he's in a tier with Erik now.
Yeah, I think so too. So interesting that you swapped this since we started recording, because we both have Erik at 4. You had Erik at 5 before we started recording.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I just Erik's played well. Like, I think if Erik had lost to you, I think I probably would have been pretty convinced to put Erik at 5. But Erik pulled out maybe a season-saving win over you. He is right there in a roto with everyone else. I think he's probably gotten a little unlucky. And yeah, like, I think there's still some things he needs to do to improve his team. But I think the pieces are there for him to have a strong second half. And I think what separated him for me compared to Andrew was that Erik has a little more of a track record of team success here that I had a hard time of ignoring. And for now, that put him at 4 instead of 5. But that being said, if Andrew keeps playing the way he has been playing, and if Erik can't, start shifting the momentum after beating you this week, that's when I start to think Andrew should move ahead of Erik. But this is about as close as it has ever been, and Erik is really in danger of falling out of the top 4.
Yeah, I think Erik, he played really well this week to help save his season, like you said. And I just like his roster better. I like his pitching staff better, and I like his lineup better. I think he's definitely fallen behind the top 3, but I could also see that being different by the end of the season.
All right, Cam, you ready to talk about our top 3 teams?
Let's do it. Not a surprise which teams are the top 3, but it's definitely a little bit difficult to rank them. Who did you put 3rd?
This is tough. And I still don't know. I think this is more of a 2A, 2B type situation. But I can't ignore the momentum. And my 2B/3 is you. Here's my reasoning. You are 12 points ahead in the roto of Jake. But thanks to you calculating this earlier, you would have started the season 6-0 against Jake, but in your last 5, you'd be 0-5 against Jake. And I think Jake's played a little better as of recent. The gap between the roto has decreased, which is why, again, I think the roto is a good tool, but it's not necessarily the end all be all. I think you have to look at some of the other trends as well. And given that, I think I have to put Jake ahead. Now, that being said, I don't think like your team has suddenly turned into a pumpkin or anything. I think this is a little more of just like a slump than anything else. It certainly doesn't help that Judge has been on the IL twice this season now. I know it doesn't help that Volpe hasn't come up and been the player that we thought he could be. And I know that Hendricks landing on the IL hasn't really helped your bullpen situation, but I still think you have a very good team. I think you're going to bounce back. I think you're going to be a competitor, but you're just kind of in a rough stretch right now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely slumping. I think I have a good feeling that I'm starting to come out of the slump. I had a good hitting, a good all around week against Erik. Not a great week or anything, but certainly a good week. And yeah, Jake's just been playing better than me over the last month or so, and I also put him ahead of me, him at second, me at third.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's twice now you've changed. We should have just done one combined rankings because two of our differences you switched after we started recording into what I had.
Yeah, you know what? It was tough. I mean, I was still debating these. For context for you all, I put together the roto for us right before we started recording. And then we recorded basically immediately after I put it together. So I kind of put down some preliminary thoughts, and then as we were talking, I was thinking it through a little more. So this wasn't easy. I did tell you I had you and Jake as a 2A, 2B type of situation, but I guess I didn't say. I guess I might have had you as a 2A before. But yeah, I have you or Jake as a number 2 team, I guess, for a lot of the reasons I just said. I think he's playing very well right now. I know Jordan's hurt, but you got Corey Seaver back. He's been playing really well. I don't necessarily, if I was to say who has the better roster right now between you and him, I still think I would go with you because I still like your pitching staff as a whole a little better. And I do like a lot of the bats that you have offensively. But I do think that with his momentum right now, I couldn't justify putting you ahead of him.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts here too.
Yeah. The number one, we have the same number one, and that's me. I'm 26 points ahead of the roto of you, which means I'm 38 points ahead of Jake in the roto, which is not an insignificant amount. And the other thing that did it for me was you calculated the records that I would have against you and Jake. I'd be 8-1-2 against Jake on the season. I'd be 6-0-5 against you, so I would have only lost one matchup combined between both of you. Granted, we would have tied 7 times. I do have a head-to-head win over Jake. Despite the starting pitching injuries and some of the other hitting injuries that have wrapped up recently, thinking like Cedric Mullins, Pete Alonso, my teams continued to play very well, and I know those pitching reinforcements are coming over the next few weeks. Fried and Urias are starting to throw, or Fried and Woodruff are starting to throw, and Urias should be back by the time I play you next week. So, I've been able to weather that storm, and I still feel very good about my team, despite the fact that I'm a game behind Jake in the standings right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a whole lot more to say. You've been the most dominant team in the league so far this year. Sure, you've lost a few matchups, but I don't think having one more loss than Jake negates for power ranking purposes you having had the better season so far.
I think so too. But yeah, anything else you'd like to add on to power rankings, or are you ready to start talking about the matchups?
Let's dive right into the matchups. And why don't we start out with a matchup between two of our between our number 3 and number 4 teams, me versus Eric. The match
Yeah,
of the week.
I think it's a good place to start. You lost to Erik. I think you correctly predicted this whole like narrative thing of like, hey, it just makes too much sense for Erik to figure out how to pull out a win. So kudos to you for that. You lost to Erik 7-4-1. Really on the back of Erik just dominating hitting wise. He won 5 of the 6 hitting categories. You won RBIs. He won everything else. I wonder if he did set his doubles record. He had 26 doubles. That tied his doubles record. So you'd already typed that in. You could have told me. But 11 steals, 343 OBP. Great week there. And on the pitching side, he got 5 holds. So it was kind of, I told him his bullpen was an issue, and he got 5 holds. So good for him there. 75 strikeouts, you and him tied in quality starts, but his pitching ratios weren't quite up to snuff, but it was enough to beat you.
Yeah, it was. I think I'm still in a slump, but I think I played well this week, certainly. I was winning most of the week. I was winning on Sunday, and I had a good day Sunday too. Eric just had a really, really good day Sunday, and I couldn't capitalize. And yeah, my ERA is inflated because of one, there are 4 earned runs from Darvish that should have been unearned, and I'm going to be mad about this all season, even though it didn't matter. But Trent Grisham straight up dropped a fly ball. They called it 4 runs came home that would have been unearned. For some reason, they were called earned. That boosted my ERA by a bunch. But also, I streamed a couple pitchers who didn't pitch that well because I was trying to tie quality starts or win quality starts. So ERA is inflated, but overall, I still think I played well. I think tying Erik in quality starts is an achievement on its own anyway. I drove in a lot of runs. Losing to him in on base percentage is a little embarrassing considering I'm the on base percentage guy and he punts on base percentage. Yeah, I was winning runs most of the week, winning home runs. I had a good week from Jonathan India, who drove in 7 runs. Good week from Alec Boehm, who drove in 8. Brandon Nimmo probably would have been my matchup MVP had I pulled it off. Really good week from Zach Wheeler, who had a really gutsy quality start, threw well over 100 pitches, and made it through 6 somehow. But yeah, as for Erik's team, the clear matchup MVP is Ohtani. I mean, he tortured me all week, including a big home run on the last day. He hit 5 home runs, 10 RBI, 2 doubles, 8 runs, stole a base, and he also got a quality start. So that's just a perfect encapsulation of Ohtani, what he can do. Shout out to Michael Wacha for making a good start. Dylan Cease made a good start, but got paddocked. He had a good hitting performance from Christian Walker too. He hit 2 doubles on the final day, also to help with that doubles record. But yeah, it was really outside of Walker and Ohtani. They were kind of his whole offense this week.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. Christian Walker yesterday, ruining my hopes and dreams. But a great week for Erik. He played well the week before too against me. He just like would have beaten everybody but me and lost to me, and now he finally gets a well-deserved win over you. Do you think it's safe to say he saved his season with a win here?
I think so. I mean, that's 2 weeks in a row where he's played well. This puts him at 5-6. So that's certainly in that playoff push. I mean, if Alex was 5-6, we'd be saying, wow, he could be a playoff team. But if it's Erik, we're like, wow, he could miss the playoffs. So just the expectations are a little different. I think I'm not worried about him missing the playoffs. I would have been if he lost this.
Yeah, if he would have lost, he would have been 2.5 games behind a playoff spot with a head-to-head loss to Yuki. Um, I'm not sure if he's played Conor or Andrew and what happened in those matchups off the top of my head. I could look that up, but yeah, the bottom line is it would have been pretty okay. So he beat Andrew and he has not played Conor yet. So 2.5 games back would have been really tough. But yeah, let's or one more question. You're now 2-3 in your last five after starting 6-0. Any real concerns beyond what we've said earlier in this episode?
I mean, not beyond what we said earlier in this episode. I'm in a slump, and being without a Judge is really hurting my hitting. And I'm kind of having to rely on guys like Jose Siri, who I really don't want to be relying on, to be an everyday in my lineup.
I'm surprised
And I'm
not Jose Siri. That feels like a Yuki player.
what?
I'm surprised Yuki doesn't have.
Is that just because of Ray?
Well, yeah, just yeah. Honestly, I think it's probably the extent why. I thought he had Jose Siri. I could have sworn Jose Siri was on Yuki's team, but
You might have at one point. There is one team that's asked that is interested in Jose Siri, and it's not Yuki.
interesting. He's having the 12 homers, 7 steals already on the year. It's uh he's been bad in June, but or maybe a little better in June than I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fair. We don't need to dedicate a whole bunch of time to Jose Siri. Moving on. We ripped the band-aid off your matchup. Let's rip the band-aid off of mine. Upset loss to Ruthvik 4-7-1. I set two offensive records during the week and still lost. I had 27 doubles, which topped my previous high of 26. And then after tying my single week steals record 2 weeks ago against Yuki, I shattered it. It was 11 before. It's now 15, one below tying the highest ever mark set by Alex earlier this season. But it was not enough. I lost 4-7-1. It was tight in a lot of categories. I mean, I spent the entire day Sunday flipping between like I would be up 6-3-3 and then Ruthvik would be up like 4-6-2 because ERA and WHIP were so close. Like every out that was recorded would flip them. And runs, homers, and ribbies were all like neck and neck. Ultimately, Ruthvik was able to best me in runs, homers, ribbies, ERA, and WHIP. And that was enough for him to pull out the win. A frustrating one. In particular, I streamed Giovanni Moran on Thursday thinking, hey, like the rest of the Twins bullpen has pitched the past couple of days. He's going against the Tigers. Maybe he can get a hold. He gave up 3 runs, not even in a hold situation because your guy, Sonny Gray, left the game in an inning too early. And that, I think, cost me ERA for sure and maybe WHIP. Also starting Tanner Bibby on Sunday, I think cost me WHIP and maybe ERA, but yeah, it was a narrow loss. Good for Ruthvik after a bunch of narrow losses for finally being clutch on a Sunday and winning. And I'm disappointed in my team's offense after starting off the first 4 days incredibly hot, just shitting the bed the rest of the week. So, but that's how it goes sometimes. I dropped to 8-3. What do you have to say, Cam? So I don't have to keep talking about this.
Yeah, I think you definitely played well in a couple of categories, especially stolen bases. You got 4 of those from Tatis, who was the best player of any team this matchup. You also had 3 from Trey Turner, who's kind of starting to turn it around. Yeah, good double week. Tatis also had 4 of those. So, but really, yeah, the story here is Ruthvik.
577 OBP too.
God.
It's not very bad. Christian Yelich had a 5.
Yeah, that's a
that wasn't even the highest. Like Tatis just killed it this week.
Yeah, I mean that's a week where I'm tempted to give him matchup MVP, even though you lost. But I'm not going to do that. The story here is Ruthvik played really well. Maybe his best performance of the whole season. And maybe his most important matchup of the whole season. Leody Taveras had a good on base. Orlando Arcia played really well. Drove in 6 runs, scored 9. I think matchup MVP, though, has got to go to Acuna, who had a little bit lower on base percentage. But he drove in a couple extra runs. Hit an extra homer. No, you know what? I'm going to give it to Arcia. Arcia's had more categories. But they both played really well. Shout out to Jeff McNeil, driving in a couple runs with a good on base. And then he got a pair of quality starts, each from Logan Webb and Joe Musgrove. Musgrove was a little shakier during his starts, but still completed them both.
Yeah, no, definitely some good performances there for Ruthvik. I want to give a shout out to my team, obviously Tatis, who looks fantastic. Jose Altuve had a nice week as well. Christian Yelich did. Nice to see Pete Alonso come back. Emmett Sheehan, shout out 6 no-hit innings in his major league debut. Another great start from Garrett Cole. But yeah, ultimately fell short this week. I will say for having Mullins and Alonso out, and Jorge Polanco, Max Muncy, like I'm still pretty impressed in my offense. It just feels like one of those weeks where I played well, but like the other team played better. Nothing that really draws a lot of concerns for me. Just one of those that just ends really frustratingly. But one question I wanted to ask before we moved on to the next matchup. Ruthvik now advances to 4-6-1, and also while we're talking about Ruthvik, happy birthday, Ruthvik. This is a great birthday present I just gave you. But he's now 4-6-1, half a game below Erik, and a 2 games behind a Yuki Andrew Conor clump. Did he save this season?
I guess I would say that is true for him too, because he'd be pretty much all but out of it had he lost here. And now there's definitely a window. He's not going to necessarily need the tiebreaker against you, but this is one that would have been chalked up as a loss that he got a win in. So that's always good for the end of season numbers.
Absolutely. He really needed this win here. I mean, he had won 1 game before this since week 2.
Yeah, it's been rough.
That's nuts. Those 2 wins, interestingly, are against me and Erik. But he does have the tiebreaker over Conor. He's already played Conor twice. He has a loss to Yuki, and I don't think he's played Andrew yet. He is not. So he plays Andrew during that long week in a couple of weeks. So that's going to be a really important matchup for both of them. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this matchup. Anything else, or do we want to move on to the next matchup?
No, let's move on. These were really the only 2 interesting ones this week. Is there one that you feel like going to next?
I highlighted Andrew and Alex as a matchup to watch going into the week. And I want to use this as an excuse to talk more about Andrew's team, because Andrew's team just dominated offensively this week. And am I reading this right? Did he have 10 holds?
Yeah, 10 holds.
Does that set his record? Because that's a lot.
I think it certainly does, yeah.
Yeah, it did set his record. Looks like you already updated that. Yeah, he killed it. Offensively, he had 60 RBIs. Hold on, let me pull his matchup back up here. He had 16
4 holds from Steven Wilson alone.
4? Oh my goodness, that's amazing. God, good for Steven Wilson. Everything just feels like it's clicking for Andrew right now. And this week just really proved it. I mean, offensively, I mean, pitching, you saw with the holds, he got 4 quality starts. Like, yeah, 4.94 ERA to 142 WHIP are not what you want to see. He also did this with no matchup acquisitions too. That's pretty impressive. But I mean, Andrew's team's just rolling, and I really think we have to give more consideration to him as one of the top teams in the league.
I agree. I mean, I'd say this is one of the better hitting weeks we've seen from any team this season, no doubt. With a 60 RBI, 55 runs, that's basically unheard of to get them both up there. Ian Happ played really well. He drove in 10 runs with a 417 on base. I'll give a shout out to Kyle Schwarber. June Schwarber is heating up. Will Smith had a 522 on base. Bobby Witt, 407 on base. 7 RBI. But the matchup MVP, I am going to go with Ozzy Albies, who kind of lapped the field. He hit 3 homers, 10 RBI, 484 on base, 7 runs, and stole a base for good measure.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. For Alex, I mean, it was a great steals week. He had 15, almost tied his record of 16, but not a ton else went right this week. I mean, the 5 holds are nice. It just wasn't his strongest week, but I still think he's been playing pretty well as a whole this season relative to expectations, and I'm sure he'll be able to bounce back next week. But this felt like a signature win for Andrew.
Absolutely. As for Alex, I'll give a shout out to Jordan Walker, who still does look lost in the outfield, but he hit a couple homers and had a great on base percentage this week. Hopefully for Alex, he can continue to hit the ball hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add here, or do we want to move on to the next matchup?
No, let's move on. I guess Jake is the only remaining of the top 5 teams we haven't talked about. Let's talk about his matchup. He looked really good against Anthony.
Yeah, I kind of tightened up a little bit on Saturday. At one point, Jake was only up 7-5, and there was a path where Anthony could have taken over and holds, and they could have tied, but Jake put whatever little chance of that happening to rest as he just dominated offensively on Sunday. 11 runs, 15 ribbies, a 500 OBP, 89 strikeouts, 6 quality starts. So pretty solid week there pitching. Not the best bullpen week, and maybe that contributed to the ERA and WHIP being a little high. Actually, I do have to give him credit though, because the ERA and WHIP started really bad to start the week, and he was able to chip down on that a bit. But yeah, just a dominant win for Jake over Anthony. Any players you'd like to highlight, Cam?
Yeah, so starting out with Anthony's team, because he played decent. He pitched better than he has in a while, and he had a good start from Braxton Garrett as part of that. Hitting wise, Spencer Steer was good, and Christopher Morel hit 3 more home runs. But as for Jake, he got a good week from Matt Olson as a hitter. Not a lot of individual hitters that have been great, but it's Michael Harris II kind of really went off this week with 3 homers, 9 RBI, 8 runs, 536 OBP, and 2 steals. Corey Seager too was almost as good, slightly lower, and JT Realmuto too. Shout out to Kyle Tucker also. Okay, so I missed a lot of great hitting performances, but Michael Harris still a cut above the rest of these guys. He was great in a season that has not been kind to him for the most part.
Yeah, he's been doing a bit better recently, and that is good to see from Jake's perspective for sure. Maybe not for the rest of us, but yeah, dominant win for Jake. He has now won 5 straight. It's the longest win streak in the league after I snapped my win streak, and he is rolling right now as well. Anything else you'd like to
Yeah.
say about that matchup, or would we like to
Um,
move on to the next matchup?
I just want to mention that the last that's three matchup MVPs in a row who have been Braves hitters. Um, with uh Acuna being runner up for Ruthvik's matchup MVP. So they really hit the ball well this week, and it makes sense. They played the Rockies and they went 6-1 against the Rockies and the Tigers.
Yep, that'll do it. When you're playing bad teams, you're gonna rack up them stats. That did remind me of something though, and I can't believe we buried this. You in particular, I cannot believe that you buried this. Although maybe it's not the most fun thing for you. You have the loser's belt now.
I do, and this is the first time since 2019 that I have the loser's belt. Erik had owned it, and he gave it to me this week.
Who did Erik get it from before?
He got it from, I believe, his loss to. Did he lose to Yuki? I think he got it from Yuki.
He lost to Yuki week one.
Oh.
Uh, he lost before he played me the week before, and then EBO the week before that. I bet it was EBO.
Yes, he got it from EBO in week 9 when he lost to them. EBO had gotten it from Anthony, who had gotten it from Conor, who had gotten it again from EBO, and it just goes back and forth. Erik had not owned it ever before. Yeah, so me and Erik owning it back to no, that's not true. Erik had also not owned it since 2019. You, me, and Erik's each we each most recently owned the loser's belt in 2019. Erik got it, then gave it to me. If I lose this week to Yuki, then beat you, then each of the three of us will have gotten it after not having it since 2019.
Oh God, that would be something. Um, I really don't want that loser's belt. But all right, let's transition over into these last two matchups. Last two, last three, last two.
Us
Um,
too.
let's talk about the closer to two matchups. Yuki beat EBO 9-1. Not a super strong week for either team. 5 saves and 4 holds for Yuki was really nice. So good for the bullpen category. 68 strikeouts, solid, but pedestrian ERA and a whip, 448, 139, but that bested EBO's 576, 146 there. And then Yuki was a smidge better offensively. Really not a good week for EBO there at all. And Yuki was able to pull out a dub.
I'm not sure how Yuki gets any quality starts. He got 3 this week. I don't know where they come from. I guess he got one from Eflin. Yeah, one from Hunter Brown and another one from Tyler Wells. Wells pitched well. Eflin had one good start and one bad start. And yeah, Hunter Brown pitched very well. Yeah. He won 5 of the 6 pitching categories and tied the other pitching category. Somehow not sure how. I kind of had a mediocre to below average hitting week this week as well. Yeah, I wish I played him instead of I wish I played him last week instead of this coming week, because I'm sure he's going to hit a lot better against me. I'll say matchup MVP though is Corbin Carroll. This is my first matchup against Corbin Carroll. I'm nervous for that. He scored 6 runs, drove in 5, couple homers, couple doubles. Didn't steal a base. I'm sure he's going to steal more of them this coming week, though.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. Yeah, Corbin Carroll has been awesome this year and has really lived up to the hype. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. Anything else you would like to say about this matchup?
No, not really. EBO stumbled again. They're down to 3-8, sole possession of 11th place. Just not a great week for them, although I'll give a shout out to Torque. I guess I shouted him out earlier in the episode, but he had a good week. And now they had 3 saves this week, but they're top one of the top save guys, Paul Sewald, got one of them. He's no longer on their team.
Certainly going to be interesting to see how they do there without Sewald. Yuri Perez, 6 shutout innings. Also wanted to get a shout out to him. Patrick Sandoval, 7 shutout innings. They did have Lance Lynn this week. They had him for the bad start and not for the 16 strikeout start on Sunday. So that's a little bit of a bummer for them. But all right, there's one more matchup to go. That was where is it? Conor beat Daniel and Matt 10-1-1. Pretty solid week for Conor across the board. 44 runs, 44 ribbies, 15 homers, 18 doubles, solid. 6 saves, really good. 2.95 ERA, 117 WHIP. The Bellies had 44 ribbies, so good week for them there, but really not much else went right for them there. They didn't have a single save or hold. Not a good ERA or WHIP week. They did win strikeouts by 4, but really didn't do much of anything here. Anything you would like to say about
No. Yeah, Conor played well this week, and the Drury played at their usual level, maybe slightly better than usual level. I don't know. I'll give a shout out to Goldschmidt with 7 RBI. I'll give a shout out to Alex Verdugo with the 500 on base. Wilmer Flores, only a few games in their lineup, played well. I am going to give it to a 4th member of that Braves lineup, and the 6th member of the Braves lineup I've shouted out by name as having had a good week. Eddie Rosario, 474 OBP, 7 runs, 7 RBI, 3 homers. He was really good, just like everyone else on that team.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing the Rockies and the Tigers, it's going to be ugly. But
It certainly was. Pitching wise, he only had 3 quality starts, but he got a good one from Verlander, and the bullpen was really good. 3 saves from Josh Hader, who I really could have given matchup MVP to also.
yeah, I'm with you there. Anything else you'd like to say about any of these matchups, or are we ready to review next week's matchups?
No, yeah, we provided all the entertainment for the whole league this week. We each lost a thrilling matchup, and those were the only 2 thrilling matchups.
Yeah, it's nice to know that our pain provides entertainment for the league. It's truly something special. All right, so let's get into our matchups to watch for this coming week. Not as sexy of a matchup week as rivalry week was, but there's a few interesting ones here. Probably should have talked off air about what our matchup of the week is going to be. I see 3 interesting ones. Cam, I'll let you pick between the 3. I think you 3 I'm thinking of here.
Probably. I'll give an honorable mention to me versus Yuki, because Yuki always plays me hard. I'm going to go off board and say Anthony versus Ruthvik. Is that one of your 3?
Wow, that was not one of my 3, but go ahead.
I think it's the only one. The two teams are within half a game of each other. And Anthony Wynn puts him at 5-7 and back in the playoff mix. Both of these teams really need to win to get in the playoff mix, and I'm kind of finding myself intrigued by what the middle of the table looks like this year. Whichever team loses is gonna be behind the other and have to pass the other if they want to make the playoffs. So it's not where they would want to be.
Interesting. My middle of the table push matchup was going to be Erik v. Alex. I wanted to see if Erik could build on his momentum from last week after snapping that long, 4-game losing streak. And Alex and Zach have looked better recently, and I wanted to see if they'd be able to kind of steal a big win here. Obviously, a shout out to Yuki for the obvious reasons. If Yuki wants to keep up with that clump and you rebounding after losing to Erik, and then having a big matchup against me the week after, you could really use a win here. And honestly, you have not had a signature win this year, I don't feel like. I think the closest is beating Andrew week 1, but it really has not felt like you had a signature win in a while, or maybe at all.
Not really. And I have beaten Yuki already this year.
Yeah,
So if that's a signature win, then I'll take it. But yeah, I haven't played a lot of great teams. I have beaten Andrew, but
yeah.
yeah, I haven't had a lot of chances, and I've come up very close but short in my chances.
Absolutely. The only other matchup I wanted to give a brief shout out to was Jake playing Conor. Um, Jake coming off a huge win over Anthony. Conor is no pushover by any means, and I think that should be another solid matchup as well. Kind of in the same ilk of Yuki, a top team versus kind of that tier 2 team. But without further ado, let's go into our picks from last week. I lost to Ruthvik. We both picked myself to win. We both picked Andrew and Jake to win and Conor to win. All 3 of those were wins. You picked Erik to win and Yuki to win. You were correct there. I picked you and EBO to tie Yuki and Erik, and that didn't work out so hot. So you had a very good pick'em week. You won 5-1, including correctly predicting that you were going to lose. And I went 3-1-2. That puts you 4 games ahead of me in Naruto. You just gained a game on me this week because you are still first in the pick'em. Congratulations. You get to pick first again this week. So Cam, take it away.
Yeah, I'm killing it in the pick so far. I think you're going to beat the jury, and I think I'd be surprised if you didn't 12 of them.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
I think Ruthvik will beat Anthony. I think Andrew will beat EBO. I think I'll beat Yuki. I think Erik will beat Alex, and I think it'll be pretty convincing, more convincing than you think it'll be.
Yeah.
And that leaves Jake versus Conor, and I think it'll be Jake. Jake's on fire lately.
Yeah, I'm going to pick myself to beat Daniel and Matt. I'm going to pick Erik to beat Alex and Zach. I don't think it's going to be super close. I think you're right about that, but you never know. I think Ruthvik will beat Anthony. I think Ruthvik's just playing a bit better recently. I think Andrew's going to beat EBO. I think Jake's going to beat Conor. And then Yuki. As tempted as I am to pick Yuki to kind of fuck around or to pick a tie, I think it's going to be you. But watch that be the matchup where we both picked wrong. And that means we have the same exact picks this week.
Well, that's no fun.
That is no fun. It's been a little while since we've had identical picks. I think we have to date back to last season. Last time we both had the same picks, just from a quick look, was week 18 of last season. We interestingly both picked Erik to beat Yuki and picked Jake to beat Alex and Zach, and they both lost.
Oh, big week of upsets.
Yeah, it was a week of upsets. And then Oh, there's a week I won 6-0 last season. Did you know that?
No.
No, I'm just now realizing it. Before that, we also picked in week 7 of last year, identical picks. We won 5-0-1. The tie was we both picked me to beat EBO, and I tied EBO. And that is it, at least in the last 2 seasons. I wonder if in 2021 we did the same. That's somewhere buried on a note in my notes app, which I would have to dig out. But there we have it. We picked the same pick 'em for this week. We picked me, you, Erik, Jake, Ruthvik, and Andrew to win. I think as we're starting to see some of the separation in the standings, maybe it's going to be a little easier or a little more likely that we see kind of similar pick'ems. So, but we'll see. Anything else you would like to add before we wrap up this very great episode?
No, that's all I had. Let's hope we both go 6-0.
Yes. Or I hope we both go 5-1. I hope you lose to Yuki, but honestly, I think I hope that every team I picked other than me loses. So I hope I go 1-5. But yeah, I think that'll do it. We will see you next week for another podcast.
Laughing we swim down the river, floating we live, bound together. And everyone's a loser, baby, that's true. And everyone's a loser, baby, that's true.
This podcast is good.